Happy Friday. It is almost here. 49ers Seahawks. That's a game that we look forward to every single season, and we get it twice because they're in the same division. So this time we're going five keys again. And I think a appropriate way to start five keys for 49ers Seahawks is a look back at my five keys for 49ers Packers to illustrate just how miserably the 49ers failed to execute what was important last week. So, just a quick, very quick rewind to last week. These are my five keys for the Packers, and then we'll get to the Seahawks. One, run like it's 2019. 49ers did not do that. What were they at? Like 3.2 yards per carry? They got beaten up front really badly. It was the opposite of 2019. Green Bay took it to them on both the offensive and defensive lines. Two, let Nick Bosa eat. Nick Bosa was ready to eat against the Packers. You saw him working against Neiman, the fourth option at left tackle in the first few drives, just dominating him. But the 49ers didn't let Nick Bosa eat because they played so poorly on the back end in the secondary, and because Aaron Rodgers, give him credit and give that Packers offense credit, was able to turn the tables on the 49ers and unleash the quick game. So although Nick Bosa won, he didn't get to Aaron Rodgers because the game plan for Green Bay was completely designed and completely successful in counteracting him. Defend early Green Bay downfield strikes. The very first third down of the game was a deep ball to Alan Lazard that beat K'Wan Williams, and I think also injured K'Wan Williams since he strained his calf on the play. You can expect him on injured reserve by Saturday. So, again, big time failure. 49ers did not execute key number three. Stay within the offense. That involves being able to run the football, and the 49ers didn't do that. That also involves Jimmy Garoppolo hitting that short third and one pass early on to George Kittle. 49ers didn't do that. You have to give Green Bay credit. They came out in zone defense, even though the 49ers thought they'd be in man early on that Kittle third and one. Discombobulated the timing of the play. No matter how we got to the end point, we still got there. And the 49ers did not stay within the offense. Green Bay forced them off schedule. And I think by the end of this game, Jimmy Garoppolo has only he's only had 23 first quarter offensive snaps. For comparison, Dak Prescott of the Cowboys leads the NFL with 66 first quarter offensive snaps. You just cannot go three and out in the first quarter. Otherwise, you won't rack up the play count. You won't be able to set up what Kyle Shanahan wants to set up. It's important to stay on the field. And Jimmy Garoppolo is a rhythmic quarterback. He can be very good when he's in rhythm. He was good in the second half of this game against the Packers. Very efficient second half. 49ers put up 28 points in 31 minutes because Garoppolo entered his rhythm. And that was even without a run game, even with the offensive line not pass blocking well. But he wasn't in that rhythm early, and that meant that the 49ers weren't able to stay within their offense. Finally, my final key last week was fly to Green Bay's quick game. 49ers did not do that. Aaron Rodgers, that was some of his quickest released action of his career. I mean, he was getting rid of that ball in 2.3 seconds. The 49ers had to be able to get to the outside and prevent some of those throws from being 5 or 6 yard gains to keep the Packers behind schedule. And, it just didn't happen for the 49ers. The quick game was effective for Green Bay, and the run game was effective for Green Bay. Aaron Jones didn't break any big runs, but it was a consistent 4 yards a carry. 49ers, needless to say, before I even get into these Seattle keys, are going to have to do better this next week. So, on to the five keys for 49ers Seahawks. Joe Fan, former Seahawks reporter, now working in Vegas, and also former 49ers reporter, was on with me earlier this morning. You could check that out on my YouTube channel. I thought Joe was a perfect guest for 49ers Seahawks, so make sure you see that video in case you missed it this morning. I'll tweet it again, do all that stuff. But most importantly, make sure you're subscribed to this YouTube channel. David Lombardi on YouTube, Lombardi himself on Twitter, and all the other social media accounts. I don't want you missing these videos because we're breaking these games down in nuanced fashion. And that's exactly what happened last week. I mean, the 49ers had the advantage on paper up front, but they got their asses kicked on the field up front on both sides of the ball. That ended up being the story. Guys, everybody in the NFL is talented. This is the most competitive league of football that there is. So one thing goes wrong, things can violently swing against you. Couple things go right, things can violently swing back in your favor. This is not Ohio State playing Akron on a random Saturday. This is the San Francisco 49ers playing the Green Bay Packers, and the San Francisco 49ers playing the Seattle Seahawks on Sunday on Fox, NFL football. This is low, very small margin for error activity happening out there. And that's why these 5 keys are going to be so important to execute. So here we go. 49ers Seahawks. First key, slow Russell Wilson early. Russell Wilson and the Seahawks offense under new coordinator Shane Waldron, who is a disciple of Sean McVay, has married a lot of Rams offensive concepts. And guess what? The Rams like to start games and start seasons fast. They've done so under Sean McVay, even with Jared Goff back when he was there, and it's continuing with Matt Stafford. The Seahawks have married that quick strike, start fast Rams tendency, and they've put it together with their own improvisational Russell Wilson offense. It's a hybrid of both, and there's been no NFL offense that's been more efficient in the first half than the Seattle Seahawks. However, if you look right here at this graphic that I made, we'll make this big. There's been no offense worse in the second half than the Seattle Seahawks. Take a look at this. Number 1 in points per drive for the Seahawks in the first half. Number 32 in the second half. Adjusted net yards per pass, Wilson goes from number 1 to number 7, so he stays good in the second half. But the run game has fallen off a cliff in the second half for the Seahawks from number 2 to number 21. And they also drop down in yards per play. But mainly the scoring just isn't there. The Seahawks go from the very best in the NFL in half number 1 to the very worst in the NFL in half number 2. And I know this is something that we're not used to seeing from Russell Wilson, because Russell Wilson is the quarterback who's tormented the 49ers for a decade, even in games that they've started quickly against him defensively. He's always the guy that seems to wear down the opposing team with how he scrambles back there and is able to improvise. And then even against that great 49ers 2019 defense, it was beaten up. So week 17 might not have been the best gauge of how that 49ers defense can play Russell Wilson. But even against that team, Russell Wilson was able to move the ball late. Thankfully, for the 49ers' sake, Dre Greenlaw was there at the 1-inch line to stop him. But the point is, the 49ers shut Russell Wilson out in that game in the first half. They definitely did not shut him out in the second half. So this tendency right now that we're seeing through 3 weeks of Russell Wilson being the most efficient quarterback in the NFL in the first half and then completely sucking in the second half as far as putting the ball into the end zone, that's a weird tendency. Is it a bit of an aberration? Probably. Talking to Joe Fan this morning, it was really intriguing to me because he said that Russell Wilson in the second half is having trouble on short to intermediate throws, that, everything is deep and that's not quite as sustainable. It's funny because 49ers fans have arguments until they're blue in the face 24/7 every single day of the year about how Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't throw deep or outside the numbers enough, even though he did throw deep and outside the numbers against Green Bay. He didn't do it a lot, but he had a very nice throw, I thought, to Deebo Samuel that was incomplete, where Eric Stokes broke it up on the final drive. That was deep and outside the numbers. Maybe Garoppolo's best throw of the evening, but Deebo Samuel didn't win on the route. And of course, he made a nice throw to George Kittle that was intercepted on the fantastic play from Jair Alexander. But the point is that we have so many debates all the time about Jimmy Garoppolo and the longer throws that I think that sometimes we take the shorter game for granted, to the point where, in my opinion, Garoppolo's biggest mistake last week was the miss to Kittle on the 3rd and 1. It was the short game that did the 49ers in early, that put him in that 17-0 deficit, or was a big part of that 17-0 deficit. And talking to Joe Fan, he said that the Seahawks' second half issues have revolved a lot around misexecution of the short and intermediate game by Russell Wilson. So the exact opposite problem of what the 49ers have seen from Jimmy Garoppolo, especially in the second half. He executed the short and intermediate game well against the Packers. And it was actually the short game when he didn't execute it well early on against the Packers that did the 49ers in. So maybe the overarching lesson here, the biggest takeaway, is that the short and intermediate games are very important to both of these offenses. Even though Russell Wilson is airing out dimes downfield on the highlight reels for the SportsCenter Top 10, if he can't execute the short and intermediate game consistently, his offense is going to struggle. And that's what's happened when you see this chart for Green Bay and their offensive splits. They need to be more consistent in the second half. but they've already been very, very good in that scripted first half under Shane Waldron. Number one in the NFL, and guess what? The 49ers cannot afford that. They've fallen behind against the Eagles. I get it. It was only 3-0 against the Eagles. They've fallen behind against the Packers. That was a lot bigger deficit. It was 17-0. Both times the 49ers have overcome those deficits, but against the Packers, it was toss-up territory, and they lost the game when Aaron Rodgers had that final drive. So this time, because the Seahawks have been even better than the Packers early in games offensively, the 49ers must find a way to slow Russell Wilson, whether that be better handling of chip blocks up front, better coverage on the back end, or a combination of both. This 49ers defense needs to work cohesively so that Russell Wilson does not go off early. I cannot overstate that key. Number 2, convert early third downs. The 49ers did not do this against Green Bay when they only had 25 yards of total offense in the first quarter. They did not do it against Philadelphia when they went 3 and out 3 straight times. They obviously did it later in the game. And in the case of Jimmy Garoppolo, I wrote this article about him on Thursday. They've been doing it in general if you look at games cumulatively. You can zoom in on this right here, but this is quarterback efficiency on third down this year. The x-axis is completion percentage over expectation, and the y-axis is expected points added per play. So efficiency and accuracy. You want to be further up and to the right of this graph. Look where Jimmy Garoppolo's dot is. It's up and to the right. It's exactly where you want your quarterback to be. That's where an elite quarterback would be. The problem is that Jimmy Garoppolo's doing a lot of that great stuff on third downs over the course of the final 3 quarters, and he's doing so much of it over the course of the final 3 quarters that he puts himself on the top right of that graph, but he's not doing it in the first quarter. And against the Packers, that was badly damaging because the 49ers fell behind 17-0. So it's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde thing. You know, there's going to be so many people just trying to sell you garbage on Twitter or wherever saying, oh, you got to bench this guy. He's been terrible for 60 minutes, all this and all that. It's not the case. He's been good for 3 quarters, but he's been really bad for the first quarter. I mean, we're talking number 31 bad up to number 5 good, efficiency-wise, moving from quarters 1 to quarters 2 through 4. And I get that kind of analysis is hard for people because it's nuanced. It's not simple. It's not black or white. But I'll tell you what, it has been black or white as far as Garoppolo's drop off, or at least, or step up, I guess you could say, because he starts bad and gets better later. And the key for the 49ers is to convert early third downs that haven't even necessarily been hard third downs to convert. I talk about the short miss to Kittle, and get Jimmy Garoppolo playing efficient football throughout the game. Because early in the game, if he does it, they can play complementary football. What does that mean? That means they don't fall behind 17-0. That means that they stay within the flow of the game. That means that the run game has a better chance to be established. And that's so important to Kyle Shanahan because they've gotten enough chain-moving plays to play enough plays, to see enough running looks, to wear defenses down, to get their own line in rhythm, and to get Jimmy Garoppolo in rhythm. And when that happens, the dominoes fall. It's all connected. That means that the defense is in better position. There's less pressure on them. That means that the defense is more rested. And that means that the offense, because the opposing defense is more tired and less rested, can snowball effect positive things moving forward. If the 49ers don't convert early third downs, the snowball effect works against them. On to key number 3. Expose Jamal Adams and Seattle's blitzes. You guys know that I like talking to Greg Cosell. Every once in a while, I'll have an article talking to Greg Cosell, the great NFL films analyst who is very good at breaking down the X's and O's. And Greg Cosell was not complimentary of Jamal Adams this week. And this is an opinion I've had for a while, too. Jamal Adams is and can be a spectacular player from an individual perspective. But within the structure of Seattle's entire defense, I'm not so sure that he's improving too many things. And the proof is in the pudding. Green Bay with Jamal Adams, Seattle with Jamal Adams last season was a bottom tier defense up until Carlos Dunlap, the edge rusher, showed up in the trade from Cincinnati. That moved Seattle into the upper tier defensively. They got better. It was night and day better after they were able to develop some kind of pass rush with a 4-man front. But the problem with Jamal Adams is that the Seattle relies on him to generate a lot of its pressure, because this season, especially now, it hasn't been great up front. Last year, yes, Dunlap came. He made a difference for Seattle up front. But this season, again, they've been mediocre at best as far as pressuring the quarterback. And Jamal Adams is relied upon to blitz a lot. And any good offense that shows the ability to counter adjust within due time in a game is going to be able to burn blitzes. And that's why Jamal Adams, because he's a blitzer, that's he's not, I don't think he's great in coverage. I think that his strong suit comes attacking the quarterback, being a missile in the run game. Because that is his strength, the 49ers should be able to play off of that and find a soft spot of the field that is a resulting weakness because of the aggressiveness that comes from some of those blitzes. So the 49ers need to identify what Seattle is doing early in this game. This is something they struggled with early against Philadelphia. This is something they struggled with early against the Lions. But this time they can't struggle with it because Russell Wilson could jump all over you and give you a big lead. And then Jamal Adams can do some really, really good stuff. This time around, the 49ers have to identify what Seattle's doing early. They need to do a better job than they did against Green Bay when Green Bay was running a lot of zone coverage and the 49ers thought it was going to be man coverage. That kind of stuff is not going to fly this time, especially if the 49ers aren't ready to execute their way through some misalignments. If the 49ers do diagnose what Seattle is doing, and I think it will be easier this time, another good stat here is Seattle has run the defense that they've showed at the line of scrimmage 88% of the time this year. It's the third highest rate in the NFL. This is not a lot of pre-snap disguise stuff that Seattle is doing. So theoretically, the 49ers should be able to put themselves in the driver's seat. And you know what happens then? That means they can expose some of these blitzes. They can expose Jamal Adams, and they can expose what has not been a good defense so far. Seattle's number 27 in the league in DVOA, and I just told you why. The pass rush isn't great up front. Jamal Adams hasn't been great on the back end, and nobody in that secondary, including DJ Reed, the former 49er, have been good covering. So the 49ers need to find their matchups and attack them, and the way to do that is to make sure that they properly diagnose what Seattle is doing early so they can move the chains, and that ties in to key number 2. Key number 4, set a tone up front against the run. The 49ers did not do this last week against Green Bay. Again, Aaron Jones didn't bust many big runs, but he did consistently get 4 to 5 yards a pop. He also didn't get blown up in the backfield for any negative plays. So every time I looked up, I felt that Green Bay was ahead of schedule offensively. Aaron Rodgers saw a lot of 2nd and 5s. You saw a lot of 3rd and 3s. You saw a lot of 1st and 10s before he even got to 2nd down or 3rd down. That's unacceptable. And Russell Wilson's going to beat you if that happens against the Seattle Seahawks. Starting with Javon Kinlaw, DJ Jones, Nick Bosa, Eric Armstead, all those guys have to have a physical it has to be a physical mentality. Let's put it that way. I guess that could be a little bit of an oxymoron because one thing is mental, one thing's physical, but they go together. And you saw the 49ers with Navarro Bowman and Patrick Willis in 2011, 2012, and 2013. Those guys just said, no, you're not going to run against us. That defensive line, and that started with Justin Smith up front. The 49ers had talent, but they also had that moxie. They also had that determination where they would get offended if somebody thought that they could run consistently against them. I haven't seen that kind of physical nasty yet out of this 49ers team. First, you saw week 1 where Javon Kinlaw didn't play, and they got bulldozed a little bit. It was the 2-minute drill that was the 49ers saving grace, so they got the 2-minute drill pick from Jerry Greenlaw against Jared Goff, and then 49ers got so far ahead against Detroit that they didn't have to really worry about run defense in the second half. But 49ers didn't solve that issue on their own. The offense solved that issue. The 2-minute drill solved that issue. Jared Goff solved that issue. We saw Philadelphia run a little bit against the 49ers, but it wasn't as big of a test as Green Bay. And then we saw Green Bay consistently run against the 49ers. That cannot happen anymore, especially since Chris Carson, Seahawks back, is a good one. He's been productive this year. If he's productive again, it will allow Russell Wilson to play this game on his terms. And the 49ers simply cannot allow that to happen, especially with how beaten up their secondary is. So it's up to Kinlaw. It's up to Bosa. It's up to Armstead. It's up to Jones. Maybe even Maurice Hurst if he comes back during this game as his practice window has been activated. It's up to these guys to slow that run by setting a tone against it up front. And that starts up here. That's gut check time for the 49ers. This team got whipped against the Packers up front. This team should not be getting whipped against the Packers up front because I saw 2 years ago that they can handle the Packers up front with similar personnel packages. You can't tell me that just losing DeForest Buckner should change the whole dynamics of a matchup in the trenches. I think that the biggest thing the 49ers lost was up here. They have to be more aggressive up front. They have to have that mentality up front, and that's what setting the tone is all about, and that's key 4. Key number 5, 49ers need to keep on winning at the special teams margins. This is something that they've done really well this year. 49ers special teams ranked number 4 overall when we look at the advanced efficiency numbers. Mitch Wishnowsky, the 49ers punter, is your NFC special teams player of the month. Punt returns haven't been bad. Kick returns obviously got them back in the game against Green Bay with Trenton Cannon's 68-yarder. Robbie Gould's been good. The kickoff unit has been good for the 49ers as well. That is cumulative efficiency, and I think this 49ers Seahawks game is going to be a barn burner. George Kittle said it best, and let's look back at 2019. In Week 10, the 49ers and the Seahawks played a 15-round prize fight. By that, I mean this game came down to the last second of overtime. They played as long as they possibly could in Week 10. No matter how you feel about that game or the 49ers injury situation in it or how the Seahawks won, you have to admit that it was a great one that literally exhausted both teams up until the very final gun. In Week 17 of the 2019 season, the 49ers got their revenge. And again, that came down to 1 millimeter. That was Dre Greenlaw stopping Jacob Hollister at the goal line. Just awesome, awesome stuff. Both teams going at it in ferocious battles. I think we're going to see more of the same. And George Kittle, right here, I highlighted the quote, said, they're going to give us everything they got. After this week of practice, I'm confident our team will be ready to swing right back at them. It's going to be a heavyweight fight. There is no coincidence that these boxing analogies, heavyweight fight, prize fight, have taken over for 49ers Seahawks, because that's how these games played out in 2019, and that's how I expect this one to play out. And if that's the case, if this comes down to millimeters or inches or seconds or whatever you want to call it, winning at the special teams margins could be the difference for the 49ers. So far, the special teams have been very good in weeks 1 through 3. So if the 49ers keep that up, I think that combined with other keys, they can also get a big win here and move to 3-1. On the George Kittle front, we'll see if he's going to play. I think he will. He came out, talked to the media today, unless it's a big bluff to get Seattle, worried about him. I think he's going to play. He was running around at practice today too, off on the side, stretching with his teammates a little bit. Didn't officially practice, but this is one that I think you'll see George Kittle in. And if you don't see him in there, the 49ers have to find a way to suck it up and win the game without him, because this is a huge divisional matchup. The Rams and the Cardinals play this week. They're both undefeated. That means that one of those two teams will leave this weekend undefeated. So if you lose this game as the 49ers, you're 2-2 and you're already 2 games behind the NFC West leader, about a quarter of the way through the season. As you know, right now, the Dodgers are 2 games behind the Giants with 3 games to play. It's hard to make up a 2-game deficit in baseball, and the Dodgers have had a lot longer time to do it. So the 49ers don't want to fall behind 2 games. The problem is they're facing a desperate Seahawks team that's 1-2. And the Seahawks definitely don't want to fall down to 1-3. So Kittle or not, the 49ers are going to have to scratch and claw, because you know that the Seahawks will be scratching and clawing in this game. And that's what makes this so fun. It's going to be a rivalry game that both teams need, and the Seahawks badly need, even worse than the 49ers. Let me leave you with a parting stat. Russell Wilson has never lost 3 straight games in his career. He's currently at 2 straight losses. Jimmy Garoppolo, as a starting quarterback, has never lost 2 straight games within a season in his career. Obviously, he's currently at 1 loss with the Packers. So no matter what happens, unless it's a tie on Sunday, one of those 2 streaks will break. And the 49ers certainly hope that the streak that breaks is Russell Wilson's ability to avoid 3 straight losses, because the 49ers hold serve. They're favorites in this game by 3 points. If they beat Seattle, then they will have handed Russell Wilson his 3rd straight loss for the first time in Russell Wilson's career. Anyway, those are the 5 keys. Hope you all enjoyed them, and we'll talk to you all very soon. I'm going to run a Q&A before the game on Sunday. So make sure that you tune in Sunday morning for a Sunday morning Q&A. If I have time, I'll do something Saturday. The only way to know is if you subscribe to the channel. So subscribe right now to the YouTube channel, turn on the notifications, and I'll talk to you soon. We're going to have a fun weekend talking some 49ers football. Everybody take care.